Hello, I'm Michel Gagné, and you are listening to the Real-Time Visual Effects Podcast, where wizards reside.
You have a gift. You have a passion for creation. There's something inside you that wants to express itself, and that something has led you to explore the world of visual effects, a place where magic happens, and the only limitation is your imagination. All the greatest artists in the world started somewhere, learning and growing into the people they are today. You being here is the first step to building your legacy as an artist. Learn from the best and brightest in the real-time visual effects community. Sharpen your skills and be your best self. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 16, an interview with Shannon McSheehan Berke. Shannon is the visual effects lead at Riot Games in the R&D department, so she's overseeing all of the different IPs that Riot Games is handling right now. In addition, Shannon is probably one of the most brightest, enthusiastic, kindest people I know. She lights up the room anywhere she goes, and I'm super excited to share her story with you today. With that said, let's dive in.
Here is your host, Travis McCallum.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to have Miss Shannon McSheehan today with us. She is a visual effects artist, recently moved into the R&D division at Riot Games, but she's worked on amazing effects for the League of Legends franchise across a various number of characters and so many other awesome visual effects topics we're going to talk about today. Shannon, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Thanks for asking. Just getting my breakfast going, got my coffee, so I'm ready.
You're in Santa Monica right now. How's the weather in California?
It's been pretty good. It's getting warmer, though, and I'm not a huge fan of the super hot town, so staying inside is actually pretty good.
I would almost argue that you have the beach right next to you, but probably not a good idea to be outside.
True. Yes, I am definitely staying inside.
Shannon, I want to jump into all these awesome effects that you're creating for these games, but let's just kind of start from your origin. Tell me, how did you get started in visual effects?
Yeah, I definitely got started by chance, actually. So early on in my career, I had the pleasure of interning at a Seattle studio called Hairbrain Schemes, and I was working on the look dev of the Shadowrun Returns game, which is kind of old now that I think about it. But we were exploring all different kinds of art things, from what is the art pipeline, what is the 3D look, what are some concepts. And as part of that, we were testing out some effects packages, and we wanted to set up a scene and establish the look and feel of the world. And so as part of that, the art director wanted it to be raining. So I was like, sure, how hard can it be? And so I poked around and did a lot of purchases from the asset store in Unity and found it to be a lot of fun. And actually, it was a coworker who pointed out, like, hey, you seem to be having a lot of fun delving into visual effects. Why don't you focus on that? And it was the first time anyone had really said, like, you look like you're having a ton of fun doing this thing. And so I was like, you know what? You're right. And so going into my senior year of college, it sparked me to think of how could I cater my senior year portfolio to help me focus on visual effects. So that's really how I got started.
So dial back for a second. Did you always know that you were going to go into games? Is that something you kind of grew up with and you were like, yeah, being involved in games is where I want to be?
No, totally not. For a really long time, I had wanted to go into film and movies, and even my high school art degree was totally focused on getting into still the same college I ended up going to, but Ringling is known for animation, actually. And so I was super gung-ho on the animation track and going into animated film. I didn't get accepted, so hard pivot, and they were like, hey, we're starting this cool thing with games. Do you like games? I was like, well, yeah, I didn't even know that was an option. I love video games. let's talk about it. So no, I did not originally mean to focus on games, but I am so happy that I did.
That's awesome. I'm just wondering, like, when you were a child kind of growing up, was there like a particular game or maybe a movie, because you said film, that really kind of sparked your mind and curiosity saying, man, I wonder how they did this? I'm really interested in learning the behind the scenes.
I still did play a lot of games, and if I had to pick one game, it would absolutely be Banjo-Kazooie for the N64. I still have my Pikachu N64, and I play Banjo-Kazooie every year. I love that game. But it wasn't until I was much older that I appreciated it from a development perspective. It was just a fun game I played when I was a kid. So definitely, I had wondered at some point how these things were made and who makes them and all that good stuff. That was definitely an inspirational game for me to look back on.
Absolutely. And like 3 years ago, when I discovered that people actually do art in games, it's not just all coding, that was mind-blowing to me. So really, really cool to see that there's so many different parts and pieces that go to create a single game. But you don't think about it when you're playing it and you're like 5, 6, 7 years old.
Yeah, no, it's so much easier to appreciate the holistic experience. I find now that I'm a dev, I'm like, oh, look at these sweet effects. Or my husband's an animator and he's always like, look at these animations. So it's definitely a different experience now.
So I want to talk about what real-time visual effects means to you. What is kind of like your definition, and how does it kind of differentiate itself from, say, films in visual effects?
You know, I find that most people, say I'm in an Uber somewhere and people are like, oh, what do you do? I find myself describing real-time VFX in a more relatable way, because although it is visual effects rendered in real time for games, the more approachable perspective, in my experience, has been to explain it in the movies perspective. A lot more people seem to understand, hey, like the green screen or CG aspect, and I usually explain like, hey, that's what I do, but for video games. So I don't specifically highlight the real-time aspect of it when explaining to more general populace who may not know what that means or the practical context. But that is how I typically explain it.
You make a good point there, because if you're not in the industry or kind of involved in the artist space, I've talked to recruiters, especially here in the Dallas area, and they automatically think motion graphics. And I'm like, no. That's not it. And I end up going to the movie side, kind of saying it's like the Avengers, which isn't technically correct, but it's a better baseline for them to kind of like add some kind of relatable idea of what visual effects is.
Yeah, totally.
I want to talk to you. How long have you been doing visual effects? You said you were in school. What year was that?
I graduated in 2013.
2013. So you've been doing it for well over 7 years at this point. Thinking back to like way back in 2013, what are some things that you wish that you had known when starting out?
Yeah, the thing definitely that, and I'm still learning this today, is that everyone is here to help you. That may not always be apparent, and not everyone uses the same communication styles or has the same approach as you, but it can be really helpful to kind of take a step back and understand that everyone is here for a reason. Everyone wants to make awesome, kick butt, the most badass product possible, even if it's not the way that you had envisioned it or approached it. Everyone is still, at the end of the day, really wanting to help further the product, help you in the best way that they know how. And so I find it can be really helpful to pause, take a step back, think about that perspective, and it really helps me kickstart a more positive thought processes towards whatever project or goal that you're trying to hit, versus really thinking about that situation and how frustrating it was or how that person made you feel. Get caught up in those negative associations versus focusing on working towards the more positive outcome. So especially, everyone uses different language. Everyone at the end of the day really is there to help.
Yes, preach, girl, preach. So you're one of those half-fool girls, those eternal optimists.
I guess so.
So
Sometimes.
I'm curious, like, when you're thinking of pausing and taking a step back, what are some of your coping mechanisms or ideas that you use to cope with stress? Like, how do you de-stress and kind of step away?
Honestly, that's a really, really good question. And it's something for a long time that I needed a lot of mentorship in because everything was so important. And I would often get caught up in the moment and try to just like tank everything and be super positive, even if that meant pushing forward with positivity. And so it would be very easy to get caught up in the stress of the situation, feeling like I needed to take responsibility for moving the project forward, et cetera, whatever that stressor might be. So definitely my coping tools might be different than others. I have found a lot of value in really separating work and my home life. That's a little harder now that we're working from home. But all the more important to really have those dedicated times where you're focusing on work and the exciting spaces there. And then, hey, what do you do at home to de-stress? Do you take a hot bath? Do you read a book? What do you play video games? What is something that is non-work related, or at least for me, non-directly work related, that I can focus on elsewhere? So right now that's a lot of video games, but yeah, really making sure to separate those two spaces has been super helpful.
Awesome. I know that all of us run into issues where we're working through stuff and we struggle through it and we end up failing sometimes, but every single failure we have is a learning experience that we can grow from. So I was wondering if you could share maybe a time when you struggled with something and you had to learn from it, some kind of like issue or barrier that you had to overcome.
Yeah. And Travis, to be honest with you, I fail a lot. I fail all the time. So I've had lots of opportunities to learn, and I'm just super thankful to be at a place and be working with a team who can support me through those failures and really look at them as learning opportunities. Fail fast is definitely something that I've taken advantage of at Riot. So I'm super thankful of being in an environment that will allow me to do that and learn through that, as opposed to focusing on those failures as punishment. So that is part of something that I wanted to highlight is, yes, I fail all the time. Not that I'm saying like everyone go out and fail because you're going to learn so much. Okay, maybe don't intend to fail.
Well, you bring up a good point, and I was wondering if you can kind of expand on that saying fail fast. What does that mean?
That it if you can, build in, either it's in the environment, so like have individuals check you on your goals or the way that you are evaluating, even as the nuanced as craft execution. If you have a metric of failing quickly, like the time specific aspect of it, you're much more likely to have the majority of the time to learn from that failing and take those key learnings forward with you. So the time aspect of fast is really important. So whether that be a coworker helping you evaluate if you're hitting your goals, again, or if you have craft competencies that you're trying to hit.
Awesome. I was thinking about like this law that exists. I think it's called the Parkinson's law, where the amount of time that you're given, say a deadline, you're going to work as much as that time allows. So let's say you've got a fireball that you're creating and you're given 3 days to get it done. You're definitely going to get that fireball done in 3 days. But if you expanded that to 3 months, you would take the whole 3 months to get it done. So when we think about this idea of like failing fast, when you set those deadlines for yourself for, say, draft 1, draft 2, or kind of the end thing, that's going to accelerate and get you off your butt to actually finish what you start rather than just putting it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, it has so many practical applications too as a part of just general production. Even if you have a really set in stone production timeline, building in those failing fast checks to help you constantly work towards that goal will just help you as opposed to just, I have all of this time. So totally support that.
So I definitely want to talk about kind of your growth during your time as a visual effects artist into senior and lead and principal and all these others. Now that you've had the opportunity to kind of like see your own work progress and other visual effects artists that you work with, do you have any kind of thoughts on things that you're looking for in that kind of work that separates good from great effects and things that you're looking for?
Yeah, for this one in particular, my work, the things that I look for in my work are no different than my coworkers' work, are no different than if you submit an art test to Riot. All the things that I would be looking for in terms of craft competencies are equal across the board. That said, in terms of the way that Riot is structured, the difference between a mid-level artist and a senior level artist is not necessarily fully chalked up to holistic craft mastery. Like there's the whole other side of soft skills that go into that. So I did want to highlight that as, although there are specific craft things I am looking for, if you are an amazing master of the craft, that's only a part of what makes you an awesome game developer. So keep
And
that in
describe to
mind.
me, what are some examples of soft skills real quick?
Yeah, soft skills would be, and I apologize, I don't have like the craft competency, because we do have awesome documentation that highlights really specifics as to how to measure those things, because it can be very difficult to measure soft skills. That really does come down to like the holistic communication styles, approaches to work, timeliness, things of that nature that are not specifically like craft execution, but also developer approach and relationships, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So soft skills are not specific to a job function, but they're really applicable across any kind of job environment. So animators, environmental artists, producers, they all are needing the same soft skills, like you said, communication being an example. Nobody wants to work with somebody who's poor at communication, because you're never going to be able to articulate the actual work that you're getting done.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. You could be an amazing craftsperson, but if you're also a butt, then it's very difficult to work with you. So it's very important.
Awesome. So are you out there keeping up with the trends going out in the visual effects industry, or maybe just the games industry at whole? I'm curious, what are some of those topics or ideas out there that have really caught your attention?
Yeah, I'm admittedly more on the art focus of things, and so I don't do the best job of tracking the more tech side, but something that has come up recently at Riot, we have like a specific discipline VFX channel, and the Unreal 5 demo came out and everyone was posting in the channel being like, oh my gosh, look at all this cool stuff. So that was definitely something that was an absolute marvel, and I'm so excited to see the practical application of those things, especially for any technical advancement in the effects field that breaks down the barrier between the artistic and the more like tech side of things. Gosh, there are so many opportunities, and I'm so excited for the future of effects specifically.
In that unveil that they did, was there any kind of effect or concept that really kind of drew you in the most and was like, oh, I hope I get to implement that in my workflow someday?
It's been a hot minute since I have watched it, but if memory serves, the workflow behind getting your super highly tessellated ZBrush model, like the workflow to get that into game, was mind-boggling of how that could be possible and iterate quickly while keeping optimization in mind. Was just like, yeah, you just grab your ZBrush bottle and you throw it in, and it's great. So I am optimistic perspectives that will be an exciting and awesome and better workflow. But gosh, I'm so interested to see the practical application.
That's awesome, Shannon. Thanks for sharing. I want to jump into your workflow itself. And I know it's different for every single person, every single project, but I was wondering if you can kind of describe what a typical workflow for creating a new effect would look like from start to finish.
A new effect.
Where's your mindset when, like, I don't know, you can take a previous example or a personal project or whatever's on your mind.
Yeah. Maybe it's helpful to highlight. So I was on Champions team for 7 years. So they are a very established team and do have a pretty regimented pipeline for things that, like holistic pipeline. So it's not necessarily the nuances of how I would approach a very specific effect, but hopefully it's helpful to highlight the general processes of that team and how effects is integrated in it. So You'll start with the DNA. So that's design, narrative, and artist for the three pillars for creating a champion. Now, that artist is typically a concept artist because the concept is just a great tool to utilize to iterate quickly and align around a vision, as opposed to the technical executions of effects, for example. So those three would iterate quickly on a direction for a new character. And then once a direction was established, and in the context of League of Legends, which is a MOBA, and so you would have a certain amount of abilities locked in, then you'd add the engineer and the effects artist. So
real quick, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
I just want to understand, and I'm sure many people know, but for those that don't, what is League of Legends? Can you just kind of give an overview of the game?
Sure. League of Legends is an older game now, and there's actually a great YouTube video to explain the holistic, this is League of Legends from a high level, so I don't know if I'll do it justice, but look up that YouTube video if you're curious. League of Legends is a 5v5 champion battler, so each person has their own character, which has their own abilities. It's from an isometric camera perspective, and so your team of 5 is against another team of 5 in our more general map, which is what you'll see the esports and a lot of the more marketed and propagated ones, which will be the 5v5 map. And so your goal is to destroy the enemy's what's called a nexus, so like their base crystal, essentially.
Awesome.
Hopefully that did it justice.
Oh, that was perfect. I just wanted to give some clarity before you jump into the VFX workflow.
Yeah, no, it's I've been working on it for so many years, so it's so easy for me to assume of like, oh yeah, all these things, everyone knows those. So thank you for asking the question. So where was I? Yeah, so engineering and VFX are then added to evaluate the technical challenges, any investment necessary to make that character a reality. Because at the end of the day, that character is going to live in that environment that Travis was just asking about of the 5v5 map. So if there are any really big questions or technical hurdles, the engineer and the effects artist will be the buddies to best evaluate that and see where we need to focus our time in order to make that champion a reality. From there, the team goes into pre-production, and that's when a lot of the other members of the pod will jump on as well. The character artist, the animator will proxy out the model and do some animation explorations for how that character could move and behave, because up until that point, it's just been ideas. So we might have a direction we want to take, but it's really up to the pod to visualize those ideas and really flesh out a character from those ideas. So we'll have the pre-production timeline where we will focus on the really big ideas and answering any of the big giant question marks that might be time sinks or technical challenges, etc., so that when we go into production, we're just executing on the final art assets. There shouldn't be any gigantic unknowns during that point or anything that could totally throw a wrench in things, though I'm sure as you get more experience in the industry, that is a great goal, but not always the case. So that is the goal going into production, still focusing on final assets as well as the characters in our world have alternate looks, which are called skins. And so the skins production, which is like an alternate fantasy, goes into that as well. Then from there, we focus on the post-production, which is really bug fixing and optimization.
That's awesome. Visual effects artists are working with so many different disciplines within a single studio, at least in that production environment, because you mentioned you're there with the concept artists, kind of fleshing out the details. You're there with the animators, kind of hooking up the effects to the character moves. And you're even working with the programmers or the technical team for figuring out how they're going to play in the environment. One of the things I was thinking about, your husband's also an animator, you mentioned earlier. So I was wondering if y'all ever tag team creating, cool character effects together. Just for fun.
Well, actually, way back when I first started at Riot, my husband was actually on the original team that I joined. And so we did have the pleasure of working together early on before we were dating or anything like that. And so the very first character that I worked on was Sivir. You can look her up. She's pretty dated now. But it was fun jamming on ideas with how she has a giant boomerang and she throws it. And so her animations need to transition very smoothly into the visual effects. So yes, we have worked together and it has been really fun. He's much more on the, I'm going to animate outside of work for just fun. Mm-hmm. I'm not so much. And so we always joke of like, oh, I could add drool. He's working on like a Tyranid animation right now. And so I'm like, oh, I could add like drool and stuff. And so it's fun to brainstorm things. But I'm always like, or I could go and play video games. So I usually end up doing that.
So let's talk about that then. Describe to me what a day in the life of Shannon looks like from sunrise to sunset, including what you do in your downtime after work hours.
Yeah. Well, my workday typically starts from 10 and goes till 7. That is typical of Riot employees. Now everyone's working from home these days, which is great for me because I'm 9 months pregnant, actually. And so it's been awesome to not have to put makeup on or do my hair. Because when you're 9 months pregnant, those things get cut real fast. So I typically do sleep in and then get my coffee ready and then jump into work at 10, which usually starts with a stand-up or a play test, depending on what team I am helping out with. Because in my current role, I'm helping out quite a few different teams. And so they approach stand-ups, play tests, etc. differently. So after that, usually have some time before lunch to iterate and, make any notes from the playtest. And then I have lunch from noon to 1, usually, which usually is my husband and I eating food and sitting on our couch watching an episode of some anime or another. And then for the rest of the day, it is nice on the incubation teams because the teams are a lot smaller. There's a lot less meetings, so I do get a lot of craft-focused time to help out with art tests or feedback or effects execution or even just learning the different engines nuances. Definitely takes a lot of time. And so thankfully I have quite a bit of focus hours. And then at the end of the day, might be some kind of additional sync up or what's called mandatory fun. So the team members, we all get into a room and we play a game together. As an example, on Friday, the team that I'm on, there's an online version of Codenames. So we played that together. So something to give us some outside of work relationship building. So that's my typical day for work. Then after that, it's usually hang out with my husband. We have 2 cats, dinner, play video games. Ooblets just came out and it's so cute and so fun that yes, I have been spending many late night hours on that game. So
that's good. And is that like a single player kind of like console game that can kind of just be in your own world, your own universe, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's on Xbox and PC and it is single player. It's kind of like Pokemon meets Animal Crossing. And so, yeah, it's a very cute art style, I find very soothing. You grow your little plant babies and they wander around with you. And instead of battling, you do like card-based dance battles. So it's cute and fun.
So I had this person on Twitter message me the other day called Kate Bernard, who's a really great listener here. And she had this word in her feed called smol, S-M-O-L. Have you ever heard of that?
Well, I think so. It's just an alternate spelling of small, right?
Yeah, but it's like this idea of like cuteness, kind of like petite. And I thought, man, Shannon is somebody who is definitely into cute things. And all things, as we say in Japan, kawaii is another way. So I know you mentioned you watch anime too. So
yes, definitely watch a lot of anime. Definitely take a lot of effects inspiration from anime, and definitely love cute things. So that's me.
I want to talk about your humble beginnings at Ringling College of Art and Design, where you studied game design, and you also actively volunteered for a bunch of organizations like the Game Design Club, where you served as president, but also with Next Step Career Conference, where you were an associate. Can you share some of those experiences? And really, what are your thoughts on higher education for those interested in getting into the industry?
Sure, I am happy to share. So for me, Ringling was an amazing experience. I had so much fun there, and I met so many amazing individuals, even outside of my craft, who I continue to keep in touch with. So for me, it wasn't specifically the higher education was necessary to get where I am, but it was incredibly helpful for providing the structure that I knew that I thrived in. So when growing up, I lived abroad for a time. I was doing homeschooling, and so the freedom and flexibility of homeschooling was great, but I learned very quickly that without some guardrails and proposed with doing social studies homework or playing World of Warcraft, I would much rather play World of Warcraft. So that structure was really great for me. And I had some really amazing teachers who taught me very many aspects of game design. From that perspective, if you know you thrive in a more structured environment, I do recommend pursuing some kind of environment that facilitates that for you. That could be online classes, that could be, if you are very self-disciplined, just learning on your own. Or it could be, and I know it's a very expensive ask, to go to arts college. It was for me. But that was the environment that really helps me best learn and grow, and expose me to those Next Step Career Conference and the Game Design Club, like you had mentioned. I wouldn't have been able to participate in those things if I hadn't gone to Ringling. And so, yes, for sure, during schooling, I learned all of the awesome game design foundations, but I also learned the social aspects of participating in those events as well, which really did help me.
Awesome. I was wondering if you could just kind of explain to me, like, how you got involved in the Game Design Club and the Next Step Career Conference. What kind of got you to join in on that outside of just your studies?
Yeah, so the Game Design Club was founded before I had gone to the college, and so it was a club that I had participated in while being a freshman. If memory serves, I think for my sophomore year, I had been like a treasurer or something. And so my junior year was when I was president. It was important to me to have a different space outside of the classroom. Some of the tasks that we were charged with were creating different prototypes for games, etc. But there wasn't a great place outside of the classroom to get playtests in or prototype those games or learn from our seniors. So that was the function of the Game Design Club. It was originally just a place for that, which eventually spiraled into, when I was president, GDC is very expensive. But if you have an awesome college who's willing to match your funds, you can do fundraising. And so when I was a president, we did a lot of fundraising to help support individuals in our game design curriculum to go to GDC, which was a huge thing. And something that I was like, hey, how can I help my fellow students outside of just being a student? Because I wasn't the best student by any means. So it was a way for me to contribute and really make a meaningful impact at the college by helping others in just some other way.
The reason I bring this up, Shannon, is because I understand a lot of studios, when they're receiving demo reels from aspiring VFX artists, they receive student reels that have the same material, the same lessons that schools are teaching. So they're seeing the same effects over and over and over again. And maybe you, reviewing demo reels at Riot, kind of run into that problem every once in a while. And getting involved in these kind of organizations like Game Design Club really expands you to work outside of school on your effects, if that makes sense.
It could be at least the function of the Game Design Club at Ringling while I was there, which was much more focused on the paper prototyping and learning the design aspects. So it wasn't about getting better at like animation or 3D or things like that, though other colleges may have other game design clubs that focus elsewhere.
Okay, got it. I know that while you were in school, if I'm correct, you got your first internship at Harebrained Schemes, actually as an environmental artist, working on a game called Shadowrun Returns. Mm-hmm. What was that experience like? And when did you have that eureka moment when the VFX clicked? I know you mentioned the raindrops as an example, but if you could just kind of expand on that experience for me.
Yeah, it was a very important experience for me because up until that point, I had only had college experience, so no direct game development experience. So I was incredibly humbled, thankful that I was accepted as one of the several Ringling students actually to be accepted as interns for that year. And it was such a great learning experience because where the project was at such an early stage. All of us did get opportunities to really think holistically about the project, which I do feel like is likely rare for an internship. Usually it is either embedded on a project or a specific discipline. With us, although we were environment artists, we had the opportunity to concept different things, to animate different things. There was a lot of flexibility from our art director to pursue what made sense for us, but also so many areas of the game that had yet to be explored that it was such a awesome environment to learn and grow, but also get that experience of what is it like going to 9-to-5 job, or if you haven't had that experience yet, which I had, but not in the games industry. So what was it like being at games? And we had office dogs running around, and we lived next to a Costco, and so setting up our Costco computers and desks, it was a lot of fun and a really, really great experience.
That's awesome. I want to ask, in your opinion, what makes a good internship, and what should people be looking for when choosing the company that they want to intern at? And does paid or unpaid matter?
Yes, it does. I admittedly, before I answer the question, I am very biased. So I am biased by my own experiences, but also the amazing company that I currently work at. So it's very easy for me to say, like, absolutely paid internships only. Respect yourself. You are worth this X amount of money. But that may not always be the case. That may not always be the same approach as different companies take. So definitely keep in mind that I am pretty biased based on my experiences in company again. So yes, absolutely paid internships. What I feel has been an effective internship in the past as someone who has been an intern, as well as help facilitate what the internship for effects at Riot look like, along with, of course, my peers, is structure. Structure is super important because it helps create a foundation for the intern as well as the individuals who would be hosting that intern to align around what the internship is going to be and what the intern is going to get out of it. So if, for instance, you can present the intern up front with like, hey, this is a loose outline of the things that we're going to accomplish by the end of the internship. That's a really quick way for the intern to say, hey, cool, totally interested in this. This aligns with where I want to grow. It's a great match. Let's make it happen. It's not as easy as that.
True.
But
Like, I cannot tell you how many horror stories I've heard where it's like, oh yeah, I interned at this place. What did you do? Oh, I ran coffee and, picked up the mail. That was what I did for 3 months. And
it's so but
but
it's not unheard of, right? Like it's it's perhaps more prevalent than either of us would like. So that's why I say, yeah, structure is super important, aligned early from both perspectives about what you intend to get out of it. And make sure that as the intern going in, you know what you want to get out of it. It can be so easy to be like, oh, X company, I'm just going to put it on my resume. It's going to be awesome. It may not be as awesome as you think because you may have expectations that you may not be aware of. So take the time if you're an intern applying to really understand what you want out of the internship too.
Some of us are a little older working in different industries that are not game or art related. I was curious, have you ever worked in a day job outside of games?
Yes. Yes, I have.
What was it? And maybe how do you think that contributed to your growth as a human being?
Yeah, I would say it's easy to argue that any job has relevance. And I'll put it to you this way. So I've had tons and tons of other jobs, from waitressing to being a wine specialist at a bistro to working at a deli. So like I've had quite the breadth of odd jobs, just summer jobs, things like that. And all of those jobs have been relevant in some way to developing me as a human being. So customer service, waitressing, for instance, it teaches you a lot of patience. So, you may get that one coworker who has a different communication style and just totally chafes with the way that you work. Hey, waitressing, not all customers are going to communicate effectively what they want or how they want it or what the timeliness is or if you got their order right. So being in a parallel environment, look for what parallels are. And gosh, I'm sorry, I'm just like thinking through all of my old jobs of like, oh man, that was challenging. I'm impressed at some of the stuff that I dealt with as a waitress. Look to see what parallels you can make in the jobs that you currently have. Is it fast food? Hey, is that instilling a sense of timeliness to get the orders ready, orders prepared, and orders out? How does that parallel to prep you for being a work environment where timeliness is a really key aspect? Look for what parallels you can make, because I guarantee you, no matter what job you have, there's parallels you can make.
Earlier, you had mentioned that even in the games industry, soft skills matter. And I think this is a great parallel that we're describing, that even outside of games, those same soft skills translate over there and help you become a better person. So understand that your time is not being wasted, that the effort you put into your job, no matter where you are, is making a difference in making you a better person. So give it your all and don't half-ass it.
Yes, don't half-ass it. I mean, also earning money is good.
Yep. All right, you quickly rose up the ranks from associate, mid, senior, and lead VFX artist with increasingly more responsibility. I was wondering if you can share a little bit of that professional growth and how it's helped you.
Yeah,
was this by choice that you rose, or were you just kind of thrust upon you?
I definitely work my butt cheeks off to get where I am. At the same time, I really wouldn't be where I am without my peers and coworkers providing that constant awesome feedback loop to help me learn and grow. I really wouldn't have done it nearly as quickly. I will say that in 2018, when Riot did want to restructure their leadership architecture and go from art leaders to discipline leaders, so you'd have an effects lead, an animation lead, etc., that would be the only case I would say was not a I'm trying to search for the right words. It was a direct promotion, but also it coincided in a great timeliness aspect from the way that Riot wanted to structure. I was the best fit for Champions team, not that I didn't meet the qualifications or deserve it by any means, but it was just a great opportunity at that time to move into a new role in my career. I'm still in the FX lead role, still a manager. So I'm very thankful of that opportunity. I've had a lot of great learnings through it. But again, all thanks to my peers in the environment at Riot, allowing me to grow that quickly. So
awesome. I know League of Legends is pretty famous with many VFX that are iconic and serve as inspiration for other FX artists out there. During your time, what are some of the most memorable effects that you've had the opportunity to create? If you could maybe name 2 or 3 and tell us a little bit about them.
I love colorful effects. It provides a really fun and interesting challenge, and I say fun because it is fun for me. I love balancing all the different colors, all the different values, etc. So champions that are very colorful, like Zoe and Nico, were particularly fun ones to work on. In terms of challenging, I would say one of my last champions on Champions team was Kiana. And so in League of Legends, there are 2 primary different damage types. One of them is physical and one of them is magical. So Kiana uses this magical blade that she can imbue with elements, but she is a physical damage character. And so it was a interesting challenge from an effects perspective of making her abilities read as physical damage as opposed to the magical nature of her thematic. So that was fun. I think I did an all right job. Definitely have learnings and takeaways now that I can see her holistic kit. But it was still fun. I'm still really proud of her.
You make a good point there that there are so many different types of FX artists that tend to move toward a particular area of interest that they enjoy doing types of effects more. So in your case, you enjoy more like the magical, colorful pieces. Thinking of managing other FX artists, is that one of the big traits that you're looking for in grooming them, is kind of helping find their particular interest and allowing them to kind of build their effects work in that area? So if you're more like technical oriented, you'll let them focus more on the tech side. How does that work at Riot or for your past experience?
Yeah, as much as that would be awesome, that is not a typical approach. It is always super great and like amazing when it aligns with an artist's interests, whether they be thematic or execution based, with the products at hand. But since we can't always guarantee that match, the product really dictates the types of work necessary. It's much better for someone to be a lot more flexible, open to learning those new opportunities, because hey, they could discover when they thought, hey, I love magical, colorful effects. You try out this different champion, which is very heavy and physical and monochrome. I don't know. Just kidding. I absolutely love that. And so that is a much more product-oriented approach of being able to adapt to the needs of the product over your particular craft preferences.
On that subject, especially a lot for those aspiring artists that are still trying to get their foot in their door and they're building their first demo reel, there's typically two classifications for effects. You've got your more stylized, which League of Legends kind of falls under, but you also have your realistic effects, which kind of replicate what happens in real life, kind of like with your Battlefield franchises. When people are trying to craft effects for their demo reel, is it good to kind of mix both in the same reel, or do you try and pick one or the other that you want to focus on? And I guess is that really kind of dependent on what company you want to work for? Is that even a good idea to say, I want to work for X company, so I'm going to build my demo reel for it? So what's your advice to people building their first demo reel and deciding what effects to put into it?
Yeah, if it's your very, very first demo reel, likely all of the effects in there are going to be catered from the ground up. Like, you're not going to have the direct product experience to say, this was in X game. And so if that is the case, I would absolutely say pick a company that you would like to cater your portfolio to, because it is much easier for a recruiter or an effects artist like myself looking at your reel to bridge the gap between your execution and what we are looking for. So if you are interested in a multitude of different things, it might be a good idea to have different demo reels depending on where you would like to focus, whether it be stylized or realistic, like you had mentioned. Or if it's particularly like, I want a Blizzard demo reel, I want a Riot demo reel, I want a whatever demo reel. If you're creating everything from scratch anyways, why not cater to where your preferences already lie? Because it will only help you in the long run.
You mentioned that being personable, approachable, and passionate are some of the traits that make you stand out. And a really good example is in the popular So You Want to Make Games video series produced by Riot, where you share some advice for new artists. And your involvement in the real-time visual effects community forums also shows how dedicated you are to the craft and the people that share in it. And the reception really, Shannon, has been nothing but positive. So have you ever considered creating your own tutorials or courses to share with more VFX artists? Have you ever thought about going into education?
Thought about it, yes. Be about it, no. And that's mostly because of the time investment. It has been really fun to have the questions asked on the Real-Time VFX page and be able to answer and contribute in some way. And it's been so inspiring to see how those snippets of knowledge have translated into the growth of effects artists. Like, it's super motivating for me. I love that. Thank you for all who have reached out in one way or another. But if I were to heavily consider going in that direction, I would want to give it the time and quality, just like you're doing for this podcast, to make it something awesome, to make it something really worthwhile for those viewers. So right now, that's just not where my focus is, especially I'm going to have a baby soon. And so definitely don't foresee it in the future either. But that said, there are some amazingly, amazingly talented artists who are pursuing this track, like Jason Kaiser. And so I really encourage, there is now more opportunities for individuals to learn and grow. So I feel less guilty about not doing it.
So you've since moved off the League team to move into R&D for Riot as a whole. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about if there's been any kind of specific types of effects that you have enjoyed making the most, and why is that, whether it be in the cinematics, character, ambience, etc.
Yes. I definitely can't share anything that I've been recently working on with my new teams, but for the champions space, definitely the vast majority of things necessary would be combat effects, just within the context of the game. And so that's where the majority of my experience and focus lie.
Awesome. Shannon, are you ready to get into the lightning round questions? Quick and easy, just like visual effects.
Oh, quick and easy. That's the words I use. Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
What is a perfect one-day getaway in the Santa Monica and surrounding area?
I would have to say the Santa Monica Pier, although I wouldn't go there right now with COVID. But it is a nice place to hang out if you like shopping.
Are there any particular shopping places you enjoy the most? Are you more in clothes or food or jewelry? Like, what's your...
They have quite the mix on the pier on 3rd Street. And so it's kind of like one-stop shop for if you want frozen yogurt or if you want clothes, all that good like LA fancy stuff. That's the place to go. So if you want to be overwhelmed with people and American products, go there.
What video game or app are you using on your phone that is the most fun?
The most fun. I've been playing a game called Homescapes for a couple of years now. It's fun because I can go to it at any time. Although Pokemon Cafe Mix just recently came out and it is super, super cute. I haven't played it a ton, but I love Eevees, and Eevee is your like starting Pokemon to help you open your cafe and make cute Pokemon themed food. So highly recommend.
I love Pokemon. We bought the Let's Go Eevee edition for the Switch.
Yeah,
and I just cannot get my girlfriend to get past Brock. Like, I'm telling her, get through Kanto region. It all makes sense because she's into the Pokemon Go so much, but I guess it's different.
Such a cute game, though. Oh my gosh.
What is your favorite thing to cook or eat?
I prefer eating over cooking. Not that I can't, but my favorite food by a long shot is popcorn. I love popcorn so much. All the different popcorn salts. It's, oh my gosh, I love popcorn.
So I imagine whenever you go to the movie theater, you get that giant tub and you get a refill.
I have a whole system. I'm that person who brings their own popcorn salt to the movie theater. And so you'll see me take out my salt from my purse. And then there's a specific tray, in case you don't know this, you can order or ask the people for a tray and they will give you a cardboard box you can dump your popcorn in so you can get more even salt distribution. Little tip. Yep. Lots of butter, lots of salt.
What is your favorite book or podcast you've listened to recently?
Book or podcast? I've been reading a ton of books, just going through a lot of my older ones. Garth Nix is an amazing author, so I've been rereading a lot of his series. In terms of podcasts, I'll be honest, it's really hard for me to work and focus and listen to a podcast at the same time. I have to do one or the other. And so the Real Time VFX podcast is definitely the podcast that I have been listening to most notably recently. So,
oh, you're too
good
kind.
job.
I bet it was nice listening to Matt Schwartz, one of your coworkers.
Yeah. And Alex Redfish actually works at Riot as well, too. So it was really fun. And I just finished hearing Rachel. Oh, my gosh. It's such a nice, intimate snippet into their thought processes and all of the questions that you asked. Oh, it's so good. I love it.
Favorite video game visual effect you're jealous of that isn't your own?
Jealous is a strong word. I don't know. There's lots of really, really cool effects. And I would say recently there's the GIF going around of Half-Life Alyx where she's in VR holding up a bottle and the liquid is kind of swishing around in the bottle. I'm sure if you search Half-Life Alyx bottle shader. So I guess it's more of like shader work. But oh my gosh, it's so heckin' beautiful. And in VR space too, oh my gosh. That was an effect that I was just like, I have no idea how to make this. It's so beautiful.
Isn't that using Unreal Engine's like new Niagara system, kind of with the fluid sim? I could be wrong, but
honestly, I don't know. But it's pretty.
What are you most excited about for the future of visual effects?
The most excited about? I think I'm most excited about any progression that allows the art side and technical side of effects to get closer together. I'm in the process of learning Unreal and Unity, and oh my gosh, some of the technical hurdles of like C# writing your shaders in Unity is just there's so much to learn there. Really cool stuff, but feels very prohibitive for quick iterations if you don't already have that skill set. So yes, I'm super excited for anything that breaks down the barrier between the tech and art side.
Best advice for first-time visual effects artists or people looking to get into the industry?
Best advice. I would say keep trying. If that means like keep trying for job applications or keep trying different applications of visual effects. Either way, keep trying. The effects bar is very high, and like I just mentioned, sometimes it can feel kind of prohibitive. There's so much knowledge there. Don't give up. I know that's easy for me to say. Don't give up. Keep trying. Keep learning. There's so much to learn, but I promise you it'll lead to awesome results if you just keep trying.
Awesome. What question do you never get asked that you wish you were asked more often?
Never asked. Okay, I would say it's not something that I'm never asked. Maybe this is flubbing the question, but not something that I'm never asked, but something that I wish people would do more of is ask questions during interviews. So I mean, you go into an interview, you're definitely going to be asked questions, but you are interviewing the company just as much as the company is interviewing you. You have equal stake in if this is the right place for you. So definitely have questions that relate to evaluating if this company, if this workplace, if this product is something that you are going to equally be as invested in. So ask questions back during an interview. Please, 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 please.
I got to ask then, do you have any recommended questions that you feel like are good ones to ask a company?
I would say if there's anything particularly that you, as an individual contributor, are particularly interested in, go into that interview with those questions. So it could be, it's very individualistic, so I don't have particular questions, but questions that I have been happy to see the candidate show interest in if it wasn't something that we had highlighted during the interview process. What is the feedback culture like? And as the person asking the question, what is ideal for you? Don't base it off of their answer, because then they could answer anything and you'd be like, great. So know what good looks like for the questions that you are asking, no matter what those questions are. Sorry, my cat is crying. Stop, honey, stop. But no particular questions, but find out what is meaningful for you and make sure that those questions are answered.
Any final thoughts to plug? Anything you want to promote, either be personal or professional? Is there a good place if people want to follow up on this interview, they can contact you or just get in touch?
I definitely want to plug the Real-Time VFX podcast. You put in so much work, and I really appreciate it. And the podcasts that are out so far are super informative. So if you haven't listened to those yet, please, please do. Definitely want to plug all of your hard work. So good job. In the same vein, the Real-Time VFX website is a great place to learn, share your knowledge. I actually have a post up that I will plug right now is wanting to improve visual effects art tests. I'm very interested in the discipline's perspective as to how to make that a great experience. So I will take this opportunity to plug that thread, and definitely you can reach out to me via the Real-Time VFX webpage as well.
Awesome. Shannon, it has been a pleasure to talk with you today. Thank you so much.
Of course. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's episode with Shannon. She was an absolute pleasure to talk with, and I hope you got something out of the things she had to share. Her story is really inspiring for everybody. One of the things that stood out to me was how Shannon had taken her demo reel and applied for different positions at VFX companies and ended up not getting the job. But rather than give up and just move on to greener pastures, Shannon persevered by putting herself out there and improving on her work and applying again and again, and eventually she landed her dream job, now 8+ years, going strong. So do not give up on your dreams. If you put in the work, you will achieve them. The other side is that Shannon started out somewhere that was not in VFX, but through experimentation, through, trying new things, she found VFX. So understand that we all come from different paths in life, and just being immersed in the field alone can lead to an awesome place. So definitely don't say no, be a yes man or woman, and pursue those things that make you happy. Until our next episode, rock on.